You have invited Mr. Tong Jianming from the Supreme People's Procuratorate to introduce to us about how the Procuratorate forces can contribute to a well-off society and take your questions. Today with us, we have Mr. Xiaokang from the 1st Procuratorate Bureau and Mr. Zheng Xinjian from the 4th Bureau. From the 8th Bureau, Mr. Wu Weilie. From the 10th Bureau, Mr. Xiaokang. Now, Mr. Tong Jianming will give a briefing. Dear media friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a real pleasure for me to be here this morning for this presser. On behalf of Mr. Zhang Jun and the Supreme People's Procuratorate, we would love to extend our sincere thanks for the media group's long-term support and attention since the 18th National Congress. Under the guidance and leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, the Procuratorate has been executing the people-orientedness in an effort to contributing to the well-off society in an all-round way. And we have worked on the following 5 fronts. First, to promote the building of a safe China to guarantee social security, stability, and people's safety. A safe social environment is the precondition of a well-off society in an all-round way. So the Procuratorate has always been practicing the national security concepts to crack down upon different criminal behaviors. Until August this year, we have held 8 million people in custody and prosecuted over 10 million criminals. And the 3 years crackdown upon the black forces and criminal forces have amounted to about 230,000 people. And secondly, we have been actively integrating into the social landscape to trigger economic and social development in a high-quality way. We are trying to shape a law-based social environment. And we have organized our panel to solve the issue of the long-hanging cases to support the enterprise's operation. For example, one case involves 40,000 RMB yuan because of the fraudulent receipts, and in 2021, the case was finally filed. Because of the lack of manpower, before, the case was suspended. But in 2021, the threshold of a case was elevated to 50,000, and the Procuratorate Bureau, according to the law, started its investigation. And we also had a pilot program about the involved enterprises and urged the enterprises to reform themselves in order to guarantee law-abiding operation of those enterprises. As to IPR protection, we also have criminal and civil investigations to enhance the judicial guarantee of the IPR protection in order to support an innovative country. And thirdly, we are executing our commitment about safeguarding social justice and fairness. And we bear in mind President Xi Jinping's instructions about allowing the general public to feel justice. We honor our commitment to the judicial fairness. Until August this year, we have oversighted the Public Security Bureau's cases, amounting to 170,000 cases that should have been filed. For the mild criminals, there are about 150,000 cases involved that should be cancelled the case. And also there have been counter-proposals, counter-appeals amounting to a certain number as well. We are executing the investigation system. We have dispatchment of personnel and also tour investigation. That is helpful to guarantee justice in a broad sense. And we also aim to improve the governance efficiency. In the recent years, in our cases, we discovered the social governance issues. So we propose to improve social justice so as to guarantee the later stage of the case handling. The Supreme People's Procuratorate have started with the campus safety, the banking supervision, and avoiding fraudulent appeal and cybersecurity and so on. We also have sent number 1 and number 6 proposals to the certain entities. We also published the guiding cases to guide the society towards the law-based awareness. For example, the Kunshan case. With our new cases publishing, we encourage the general public to set up their own awareness and never bow to the criminal forces. Fifthly, serving the general public to boost their welfare. We are starting to take seriously the complaints from the general public, particularly the petition letters from the public. For some appeals that remains unresolved because of difficulties, we started with the practical actions to handle those complaints. In the first 8 months this year, we have resolved 4,000 such disagreements and disputes, including 200 of those cases that have lasted for over 10 years. For example, in Fujian, in 2003, one case involved a person that was cheated into a marriage, and that Yao has been complaining to certain entities about this problem. But the Public Security Bureau didn't file the case because of the lack of the causes. And the marriage registration was finalized. And then Yao asked for a divorce to the people's courts and cancel the marriage registration. But all of those requests have been rebutted. From a legal perspective, there is no problem about the decisions of the courts. But during this time, Mr. Yao had a relationship with another woman and gave birth to 2 children, but the 2 children could not be admitted to schools because of that registration. So there was a public hearing later on, and the proposal to the Civil Affairs Office was admitted. The registration was finally abortioned, and the Public Security Bureau started their investigation into this marriage fraud. And the criminal was taken in custody, and Mr. Yao's request was resolved and answered. On June the 15th this year, the CPC Central Committee published a decision and opinion on enhancing the public security supervision. That was the first time of the past 100 years, manifesting the CPC Central Committee's firm decision to execute the law-based society. And the Procuratorate Bureau will practice the opinions in this document to elevate the capability of the legal forces in supervision and contribute to building a socialist society in an all-round way. And that's all for my briefing. And now we welcome the questions from the media groups. Thank you, Mr. Tong. Now let's open the floor to questions, and please identify yourself before raising the question. Thank you from the Phoenix TV. A well-off society in an all-round way is indispensable from the social safety. People's aspiration for a better life is relevant to safety. So how to guarantee national security for a long time, and what are the key efforts made by the procuratorate forces? Let's invite Mr. Miao from the First Bureau to take that question. Thank you for your question. Like you said, safety is the basic need of the general public. It is also a precondition for building a well-off society in an all-round way. It's also an everlasting pursuit of the procuratorate bureaus. And in the past years, our bureaus have done the following. First, we took a firm hand against those crimes that have hampered the social security. We are practicing the national security concept and crack down upon the domestic and overseas disruptive forces. For the severe, violent criminals, we put high pressure on them. Until August 2021, we have prosecuted a lot of crimes, for example, violence, robbing, and we also crack down upon the other crimes, for example, the pornography, gambling, and drug abuses. The Procuratorate Bureau also carried out a campaign lasting 3 years. In the beginning, we proposed that for any crimes that is relevant to the dark forces, we will not let them go. And we also have stringent supervision. We have cracked down upon 54,000 people relevant to the black crimes, and that was 1.5 times of the previous number. And in Yunnan, Hunan, there have been several major cases. We have reported those cases before, and I believe you are familiar with them. Now, we are also taking a regular campaign to crack down on the evil forces. And considering the epidemic prevention and control, in the early of 2020, we have gone out of the regular box. And we took about 55 cases in our hands. Then, because of the regular prevention of the epidemic, we continue to publish 25 cases traced during the epidemic time about, for example, vaccination, fraudulent behaviors. Since February 2020 till August this year, we have arrested 8,700 people and also prosecuted over 10,000 people. In the meantime, we try to guarantee the legitimate rights of those involved people in an effort to efficiently and quickly handle the cases. Fourthly, in the past 20 years, the long-standing stability of the society enables a lowering down of the crime rate. Now, over 80% of those cases are mild cases. So, by adapting to the different structure of the crimes, the Procuratorate Bureau is trying to minimize the objective forces of the society. So, We quit our accusations against over 110,000 people. Fifthly, we are assisting in building a safe network and take a firm hand against the cybersecurity crimes. For example, there was a woman in Hangzhou accusing the delivery man, and there was sensational response in the society about this case. And that case was filed by the Public Security Bureau because of the suspected slander. And it became a typical case. Under the leadership of the CPC, people have new demands for safety. So the Public Security and Procuratorate bureaus have been working together to supervise the cybersecurity. Next question, please. From the Southern Urban Daily, the general public are paying more attention to the sense of attainment and sense of happiness. So what have the Procuratorate Bureau has done to boost the people's sense of attainment and sense of happiness? Now let's give the question to Mr. Xu. Thank you for your question. For the petition letters, usually people put the words in their deepest heart in the letters. And General Secretary Xi Jinping stated that we must make great efforts to handle those petition letters. And for the reasonable pursuits and concerns of the general public, they must be answered. So our bureaus have been taken seriously those petition letters with a series of measures. And we've done the following. First, we have implemented the system of responding to people's petition letters and complaints in a timely fashion. In 2019, the Supreme People's Procuratorate proposed that we must give response to the letters in 7 days and must give the result within 3 months' time. And we made a commitment during the 2 sessions. And then gradually, with our practical actions, since 2019, we've received 2.37 million letters from the general public. And we've given procedural responses to 100% of them within 7 days. As to the results given within 3 months' time, the ratio was over 90%. For example, Mr. Xue in Shanghai has filed a petition because of the court result about his son's robbery. And later we learned that because of the fact that he was illiterate, so we helped him to handle the procedure. And Mr. Xue wrote a thank you letter to us with the external help and said that I will never give my petition again because I don't need to. And secondly, in a visible manner, we allow the general public to feel justice. According to the needs of the cases, we organized different people like the CPPCC members, NPC members, and lawyers to be in a hearing to listen to the opinions of the general public. So the proposals will be more credible. And in the first 8 months of 2021, for 10,985 petition letters, we've had public hearings. After the hearings, over 90% of those involved people agreed with the results, and 71% of those people voluntarily dropped their petition and complaints. In Fuzhou, we had a hearing, and That involved person had actually appealed for over 20 years. In that public hearing, we have invited 2 legal medical experts to give their suggestions with very good results. Since this year, procuratorate forces have had a streamlined public hearing to resolve the complaints instantly. Thirdly, the chief procurator will also be in the first line to solve the petitions. For the chief procurators to handle the cases themselves, they mainly target at the most difficult cases. In this year, 22 difficult petition letters have been resolved by the chief procurators. Different levels of chief procurators nationwide resolved 23,000 cases with a success ratio of 70%, and 91% of those complaining people have never petitioned ever after. So, the chief procurators played a role in resolving the most difficult cases. And also, they have cracked the hardest bones. In 3 years' time, we have cleared a lot of long-pending petitions that have lasted over 5 years. Such a dedicated campaign of resolving the long-standing unresolved cases was coming to fruition. There are 9 criteria for those cases. The chief procurators will take the first responsibility and have public hearing. There are 10 measures involved. Now, this dedicated campaign is going on smoothly. By August this year, nationwide, for the 16,000 petitions have been properly handled. 94% of those cases have come to a success. For example, Mr. Huang was seeing his wife killed in 2004. The criminal was arrested, but because of the complaints of improper settlement and decision of penalty, Mr. Huang has come to a difficult life because of that typical case. So, the Procuratorate Bureau kicked off a judicial assistance procedure. For example, for his grandson, we had judicial aid of that kid to help his schooling, and Huang was thankful to the party and the department and said that he will never file a petition letter again. And I'd love to add some more information. We have 2 working sites, one in Donghuamen, the other in Shijingshan. And the Supreme People's Procuratorate received the largest number of petition letters. Previously, we would collect all of those letters all together every 1 or 2 weeks to Shijingshan. But since 2018, we changed this method. Every day, we would collect the letters 2 times, 1 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, to guarantee instant reply to the applicant. At least we could give them the note that we have received your complaint. So that's all I would love to add. Thank you. Next question. From China News Service, My question is about the campaign of the blue sky protection. To execute that policy, what has the Procuratorate done to guarantee the successful campaign? Let's invite Mr. Hu to answer your question. Thank you for your question. Since the 18th National Congress, CPC Central Committee give top priority to the environmental protection campaign, and the Supreme People's Procuratorate has been profoundly implementing the idea of President Xi Jinping that green is gold, and we've taken a series of measures. With the most stringent measures, we are trying to live up to the criteria and assist the Blue Sky campaign, and we've done the following. Firstly, zero tolerance for the illegal dumping, illegal emission. Since 2013, we filed cases against 310,000 people because of their pollution behaviors. Ecological civilization, resource protection have become two of the four mandatory fields. In 4 years' time, we've filed 270,000 public litigations in those fields. So, the proportion of the environmental protection among all the public litigations is over 50%. So green is gold is practiced in our public interest litigation. It's one special highlight of our public litigation, and it's one of the concerns of the international community. Secondly, the provincial level procuratorate stepped up their efforts in handling the cases involving ecology and environment. 8 billion cases have been filed in those fields. The Supreme People's Procuratorate gave their insight to the Wanfeng Lake pollution. We've collected we've actually involved 3 provinces. After filing the case, with the joint efforts for 1 year, the illegal containers and other visible pollutants on the lake of Wanfeng Lake has been properly settled. Around Nansihu Lake in Shandong Province was another case going on smoothly, promoting the relevant emitting enterprises to handle their emittents. We settled 21,000 tons of pollutants. We also disposed the black waters and enterprises raising illegally. And thirdly, we are working on a synergy effect among all the river and lake protection. In January 2019, 9 departments worked together to publish a document about how to assist each other in the Blue Sky campaign. For the illegal behaviors polluting the Yangtze River environment, the Supreme People's Procuratorate is exploring 11 provinces to have a trans-regional mechanism to help each other protect the Yellow River and Yangtze River. We are working with water conservancy bureaus to protect the mother river. And the river chief plus procurator is a new mechanism, and we handled about 1,090 cases involved in this campaign. We also put our hands on the maritime protection, and 1,700 such cases are filed. maritime environment protection and maritime resource reservation were our new campaign. And we're also scaling up our efforts. From environmental pollution, we've expanded our responsibilities to the wildlife protection and even ancient village protection. We also have published some typical cases to guide the society about how to use the force of procuratorate and public litigation to safeguard our green environment. Next question, please. From the cover. Judicial efficiency has been improved. And it was believed that the lenient policy may cause some problems. So what's your take on that? Mr. Miao will answer that question. The leniency is a new policy in China. The Procuratorate bureaus in China, while handling the criminal behaviors, 85% of the cases are adaptable to the leniency policy. After the first hearing, less than 4% of them will appeal. That's about 13.7% lower than the other cases. And the proportion of probation by the court is also much higher than the other cases. That's the change, but it is worth mentioning that the leniency policy is not prevalent to all cases. For the severe cases, we will certainly crack down upon them stringently according to the law, and the leniency will not prevail in those cases. For example, in the case of Chou Hongbin, they targeted the properties of the elderly. They cheated 72 elderly people with a sum of money amounting to 180 million RMB yuan. For that case, the Procuratorate insisted that for such a severe case, we will not apply the leniency policy. You just mentioned that there is a relationship between leniency policy and the trial agency. I think there is no conflict between the two. They actually work along and reinforce each other. In general, such a leniency policy can efficiently reduce the difficulty of admitting a crime, but not lowering down the criteria. We also ask for quality of evidence collection and so on. So we could practice the leniency policy. That's the precondition. Ever since the implementation of this policy, for 5,000 suspects, they all admitted to their crimes. But for some cases, we lack enough evidence. So we decided not to prosecute them. The widespread application of the leniency policy can also streamline the procedure. According to the results, over 90% of the cases are simple cases about pleading guilty. For the remaining 10%, they belong to difficult cases. Because of the application of the leniency policy, our judges could put more efforts on the difficult cases. Therefore, greatly improving the efficiency of hearing and trials. So I think between the trials procedures and this leniency policy, they are mutually reinforcing each other. And this year will be the 3rd anniversary of its coming to effect. That's going to be a critical turning point. In the future, the Procuratorate bureaus will continue to collaborate with the other judicial entities. We will try to detailize the policy and improve the practical effects of the case handling. We will do the following. First, we will improve the voluntariness of the policy execution. We will improve a negotiation mechanism. In the recent days, we will publish the typical cases and the rules about the recordings. So the whole procedure of those cases must be recorded in audio and video. Secondly, recently we are ready to publish a guideline from the Supreme People's Procuratorate about giving a sentence. Thirdly, we will have a supervision of the procurators. Last year, we had a document about People's Procurator's measures on supervision of our power. We hope to make it clean. Fourthly, we will have more theoretical study of pleading guilty to improve the theoretical guidance of our practices. Thank you. Mr. Miao introduced to us about our next steps with certain measures. And those are the focal points of our training of the procurators. Recently, we are having a campaign about training those procuratorate from the municipalities. We will have enhanced supervision of procurators. After all, they are the supervisors of judicial justice in China. For another, we will think about how to control their power execution, particularly about standardizing the discretion power of the procurators. Now we have about 85% of discretion. Once admitted and approved by the judge, we can confirm it. Compared to before, the discretion is much larger. So, how to ensure that the discretion power is executed according to the requirement? We must enhance our supervision, for example, through recording, negotiation, and so on, to standardize the execution of the discretion power. Thank you. Next question. From CMG, for the juveniles, their development is the basic requirement of a well-off society. So in recent years, how does the judicial practices done to guarantee the juvenile development? Thank you for your concern about the juvenile protection. The healthy growth of the juveniles are relevant to the happiness of the households and the future of the nation. So, the Procuratorate Bureau is involved in the whole procedure of juvenile protection. In the civil prosecution and criminal procedure, we have enrolled the juvenile protection into it. The Supreme People's Procuratorate pays high attention to the protection of juveniles with a lot of pragmatic measures. Particularly since 2018, the CPC Central Committee put high premium on the Supreme People's Court's establishment of an organ to handle the juvenile cases. It is required that the provincial procuratorate must set up their own respective panel or dispatch certain procurators to handle the juvenile cases. We have a two-way protection of juveniles. For any infringement against the rights and interests of juveniles, we will crack down upon them. And for the juveniles involved in the criminal cases, we must educate them. Since January 2018 till August this year, according to the law, we have prosecuted 206,000 people. And of course, there may be some abandoning of prosecution amounting to 35,000 cases, with one decision and one innovative manner and one campaign and one responsibility policy. We are taking comprehensive measures to protect legitimate rights of the juveniles. For one decision, you are familiar with it. It's the Supreme People's Procuratorate #1 Procuratorate decision to the Ministry of Education. In 2018, we analyzed the sexual harassment on the campuses, including the loopholes, the causes of the criminal behaviors. So we sent the #1 proposal to the educational bureaus. And together with the Ministry of Education, we are working very closely to urge the supervision of the campus protection. And we have mandatory reporting for the juveniles, especially the juveniles employed in the workforce. So instead of just having a criminal law to protect juvenile, we are making it a system to protect them. From a criminal, civil, executive, and public litigation perspectives, we are combining all of those efforts together, and they are scaled up this year in practices. The goal is to better enhance our comprehensive protection of the juveniles, because sometimes the juveniles are relevant to not just relevant and involved in the criminal cases, but also relevant to the civil forces. So we must coordinate different sectors to protect them. For one campaign, it was introduced in May this year. It's about protecting the juvenile's future. The goal of this campaign is to gather all forces to correct those wrongdoings of implementing the juvenile protection law. For one responsibility, it's about the legal education of juveniles. We have a vice president campaign. By this time, 33,000 procurators nationwide served as the vice presidents of law enforcement in 45,000 campuses. And, for example, one of my colleagues went to the number 2 middle school every year to educate the young. And there are 2 laws to protect the legitimate rights of the juveniles. And those laws ask the procuratorate to get ready for honoring their commitments. In the future, we will honor our commitments to execute the 2 laws and honor our responsibilities. Judicial protection of the juveniles' legitimate rights will be combined with the school protection, government protection, and the parenting of the juveniles. With such a combination, we aim to have an effect of 1 plus 5 outweighing 6. 1 plus 5 actually equals solid results. So with our solid actions, we will have practical implementation of the laws and generate solid results of juvenile protection. Thank you. Next question, please. From the Economic Daily. Market players are the carriers of our economy. So protecting them is to protect productive forces. So how does the Procuratorate find its starting point to protect the legitimate rights of the enterprises? Mr. Zheng Xingjian, please. Thank you for your question. In general, we have an indiscriminatory policy for all market players to protect their legitimate rights, be them SOEs, foreign investors, or private enterprises. They are taking the same. But at the meantime, we will consider the special situations of different enterprises. Particularly, we put emphasis on establishing business environment that is law-based. Firstly, we will penalize the criminal behaviors against business interests to guarantee the socialist market order. Secondly, we take into full consideration of the actual conditions of private enterprises. For the private enterprises owners who are involved in operational crimes, we will try to offer leniency. We will drop our prosecution against them, and we will measure the penalties of them accordingly. Thirdly, we deepen our supervision of those enterprise-related cases, particularly for those long-suspended cases that have never been transferred to the other entities. Such suspended cases, we will have a dedicated campaign to clear them. In 2019, 2,687 such cases were handled by us. Together with the Public Security Bureau, we kicked off a new round of dedicated campaign to clear away the cases. We have cleared 7,136 such suspending cases, with 6,332 cases already resolved. Fourthly, to establish a legal abiding business environment, we have innovated our measures. We have a compliant pilot project for those enterprises. That is to say, we will try to be careful about those enterprises. We urge the relevant enterprises to be compliant and correct their behaviors accordingly. We aim to help those enterprises to find the causes of their suspected crimes and try to fill in the loopholes in their legal system. We hope to encourage the enterprises to be law-abiding and establish a law-based business environment. Since last March, in Shanghai, Jiangsu, Shandong, and Guangdong provinces, 6 grassroots-level procuratoriats started this pilot, and in this year, we scaled it up in Beijing, Shanghai, Jiangsu, Zhejiang. In total, 27 municipal-level procuratoriats in 10 provinces and 165 grassroots-level procuratorate bureaus are pushing forward this pilot project. By August 2021, in total, we have handled 206 compliant cases involving enterprises. For those suspected enterprises, the procuratorate bureaus will try to minimize the number of prosecution or penalties. And the enterprises give their commitment to compliance, and we urge the enterprises to correct their behaviors, trying to fill in the loophole of illegal behaviors and avoid any repeated crimes in the future. For such a procedure to be legal and up to the expectation of correction, this year, together with the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Environmental Protection, SASAC, the National Taxation Administration, and Market Supervision Administration, Industry and Commerce Federation, and CCPIT, we co-published another document about the third-party evaluation mechanism so as to establish a mechanism of a third-party supervision of those enterprises. On September the 3rd this year, during a summit, it was officially launched a compliant third-party supervision mechanism and management committee. So such a modern enterprise compliance mechanism was officially launched with Chinese characteristics. So in the future, we will try to do more in terms of the enterprise's compliance, particularly the third-party supervision mechanism, so that the enterprise's compliance behavior will be more effective. And we welcome all the media groups to pay continuous attention to our work in this regard. That's all for my answer. Thank you. Next question, please. From Hong Kong Magazine. About the public interest litigation, what is the actual result in China? and how to protect the civilians' rights with the public interest litigation mechanism. Mr. Hu? Thank you. The public interest litigation system is developed with the CPC Central Committee's support. From the design to the execution, from the pilot program to the nationwide transmission, it has become a legal measure and a special echo of this era. And we have our edge. Heilongjiang Provincial Procuratorate Bureau handle the water protection case. The Jixi Procuratorate Bureau has its own maintenance center paying attention to people's health and the possible hazards of the secondary water supply. It urges certain executive branches to correct their behaviors, and the local government pays high attention accordingly with certain policies to strengthen the protection of the waterways. Meanwhile, the provincial people's government has dedicated arrangement so the water supply is safe in the whole province. In that typical case, by relying on the leadership of the CPC, different entities at different levels are working together by relying on public litigation to supervise the behaviors, and we could get to the source of this problem and have a long-term mechanism. For now, the public interest litigation has come to its 5th year. In all directions, it's developing aggressively. And from 2017, we have filed in total 500,000 public litigations, and annually, the number of the cases of public litigation is over 100,000. And for the executive litigations, it takes over 90%, over 95% of the cases, even before the litigation, has resolved the issue of public interest infringement. And secondly, the efficiency has been greatly improved from individual cases to the regional handling of similar cases. We have greatly improved people's sense of attainment. Since 2019, the Supreme People's Procuratorate and provincial level procuratoriats have filed a series of cases. Those cases usually are major cases, and we give full play to the efficiency. Thirdly, the fields are more enlarged. In addition to drug safety or environmental protection, according to the 4th plenary session of the 19th NPC, procuratoriats have carefully handled a series of cases that is in the hearts of the general public. For example, safe protection, cultural heritage protection, safe production, cybersecurity, the accessible establishments, with very good feedback from the public. We serve people's need for better lives. And fourthly, the Supreme People's Procuratorate has tried to guarantee people's food safety and Yellow River protection, the ocean protection, and doing good deeds for the general public. We've always focused on those efforts that may be conducive to people's aspiration for better lives. Fifthly, innovate our measures. Negotiation, public hearings, and cross-regional management, integrated case handling, and a guideline publishing. We hope to go to all levels and all regions to have a synergy effect of our work. In the next step, considering the national conditions, we will continue to shoulder our responsibilities and be guided by people's concerns to resolve the typical cases of public interest. We will regularize our procedure and give better play to such a public interest litigation mechanism with Chinese characteristics. We will also scale up the implementation of this mechanism. We will try to protect health rights and cultural rights of the civilians with our contribution. Thank you. And I would like to add something. China's public interest litigation is a brand new system, and it has attracted wide attention from the international community. I once received responsible people from the United Nations. He spoke very highly of China's public interest litigation. For the procuratorate in China to handle the litigation, it's rare. And it's an excellent mechanism. It's a forceful judicial system as well. That's the comments from the United Nations. Many people hope to have a better understanding of our public interest litigation system. Tomorrow, we are going to be having a meeting, video conferencing with Vietnam about public litigation. So China's public interest litigation, even though born not long ago, is very influential worldwide. Thank you. Next question, please. From China Review News. As to the usual criminal cases, it seems to be more rampant. So what's your measure against it? Thank you for your question. As you know, we are all paying attention to the cybersecurity. In recent years, the information technology is developing fast. Meanwhile, the cybercrimes are plaguing the internet. As to the case handling in the procuratorate, now the absolute number of the cases online is rising fast. There are new forms of crimes, and they are more technical based and more invisible. Crimes online are having more damage to our society. And we are more challenged by the cybercrimes. To respond to the changes, the procuratorate bureaus have worked on the following 4 measures to protect cybersecurity. For example, we intensified our efforts on our penalties of the cybercrimes, especially for the new forms of cybercrimes that happen frequently. We are very sensitive to them. And we have a whole chain penalty. And such penalties are usually very professional and integrated. We try to avoid the transmission of the cyber risks. Secondly, while insistent on penalties, we give equal attention to both penalty and prevention. While penalizing the criminals, we also set up our red line for the highly risky regions and the special groups. We continuously set up our system and reinforce our education and training. so as to cultivate the cyber security awareness of the civilians. Thirdly, coordinated efforts in the settlement. We are working together with the executive branch and the judicial branch so that the online performers will take voluntary measures to govern their environment. Fourthly, professionalism in the procuratorate. We cultivate the versatile talents in procurators we give high attention to the assistance of external experts and the integration of technologies so as to efficiently crack down upon the online criminals. Thank you. Next question. And we only allow last 2 questions, please, in the interest of time. People's aspiration for better lives include their pursuit of justice and fairness. And in recent years, there have been more attention about justifiable defense cases. And we noticed that there have been disputes about justifiable defense in more cases. So my question is, as to justifiable defense, what's going to be the next step? Mr. Miao? For justifiable defense, it is sensational in the whole society that manifests that people has higher needs of democracy and fairness. In 2018, the Kunshan case awakened the whole society about justifiable defense. In recent years, we handled a series of high-profile justifiable defense cases. For example, Zhao Yu in Fujian province and Lai Yuan case in Hebei province and the Shen Chunping case in Zhejiang province. We champion the social justice in those cases, and the legal awareness is already set up among people. To handle those cases, we must have legal sense. In recent years, such justifiable defense take up more proportion of all the cases according to the data in 2019 and 2020. 819 people were dropped their prosecution because of the reason of justifiable defense. Because of that, in more cases, there have been discussion about justifiable defense and even disputes. I believe that such a discussion is useful, but to timely respond to the different ideas, there should be the legal application criteria. We've taken a series of measures. In the end of 2018, Supreme People's Procuratorate published a document, the number 12 guideline about justifiable defense. In 2020, we published another document about the guideline on applying the justifiable defense. In the same year, we published 6 different types of justifiable defense cases. For example, Hebei Xinji had a case. It was clarified in the case the forced relocation caused some objection, and the case was published last year. In the night time, the household was broken into by the forced relocation workers. The hostess was dragged out, and the host was beaten. So in that case, the host was forced to take some justifiable defense. In the future, the Procuratorate bureaus will continue to smooth away our justifiable defense case handling. Firstly, we will take a reasonable stand to protect the legitimate rights of the people. And secondly, collect sufficient evidence and have supervision. We must have a clear idea about the causes and the whole procedure of those cases so as to pave the way for the fair resolution. Thirdly, honor our responsibility. For the cases relevant to justifiable defense, we must be daring enough to confront the two parties and try to avoid any escalation of conflicts, because for such cases, it's prone to have more conflicts among the two parties, and then the case will be escalated. Fourthly, legal education. With typical cases, we can educate more people. We will never give way to illegal behaviors, but at the same time, we will not abuse the power of justifiable defense illegally. Thank you. Last question, please. Xinhua News Agency. Not long ago, the CPC published a decision on enhancing the Procuratorate supervision power, and the legal supervision has become a new focal point of the society. So how will the Procuratorate bureaus implement the decision and give better play to the supervisory power of your branch to support the building of a socialist powerhouse with the rule of law? Not long ago, the CPC Central Committee introduced an opinion on enhancing the legal supervision of the Procuratorate bureaus in this new era. The rule of law by President Xi Jinping was enshrined in such an opinion, and in the near future, this guideline will be our guiding principle. In the opening of that opinion, it is clarified that Supreme People's Procuratorate is the supervisory body of the nation to guarantee the fair execution of our supervision power as a judicial organ, and it is an important force to ensure public interests, and is one part of the national supervisory system. So the procuratorate have our own political responsibilities. And we must execute the document. Together with the Xi Jinping's rule of law concept and the July 1st remarks, we will try to honor our legal, political, and supervisory responsibilities with a series of measures. We will learn and implement the opinion with solid steps. For now, the provincial and municipal procurators have given their own suggestions and requirements. In Hebei, Shanxi, and Xinjiang provinces, the Provincial Party Committee has published detailed execution plans to innovate the supervisory exercise of the procuratorate. The Supreme People's Procuratorate requires different levels of procuratorate bureaus to have a deep understanding of the political consideration of this opinion and have a strategic understanding of it. For the focal points and requirements in the opinion, we must integrate them into our actions. And we will take the following measures. First and foremost, look at the big picture. We must honor our responsibilities in terms of arresting and prosecution to guarantee the social security and stability and support the building of a safe China. The supervision's high-quality development will better serve the economic and social high-quality growth. We will take solid steps to execute the pilot projects of those enterprises and have pilot projects about IPR protection. As to financial and cyber crimes, we will try to avert them. And we will take practical efforts to guarantee people's livelihood and do good deeds to the public goods and public interests. And we will respond to people's higher demand of the rule of law. With the legal supervision, we will try to source back. And secondly, we will try to improve the efficiency and quality of the legal supervision. We must take an incentive and honor our civil, criminal, and executive public interest litigation responsibilities, so that all sorts of supervisory work will be coordinated and developed altogether. And the judicial highlight must be given to quality improvement. Particularly, we must take innovative measures in our working style by, for example, harnessing big data to locate problems and correct behaviors. We will assist national governance. With the digital revolution, we're going to empower the legal supervision branches. Thirdly, we will build our team of supervision. We will have an accountability system in place. Together with the party history learning and training, the party development will be given the top priority. With effective measures, we will try to improve professionalism of our procurators, and their political awareness and professionalism will be boosted altogether. We will try to generate a team of professionals. Meanwhile, we will have reform of the accountability system to improve the socialist supervision system with Chinese characteristics. Thank you, Mr. Tong. And I would also love to thank all of the other leaders and our media friends. So this is the end of this presser. See you next time.